myself. Could you guys go along and introduce yourselves and give us your area of interest in VR?
My name is Samuel Martino. I'm the CEO and founder of a small game studio just outside of DC called Dogwood Gaming. In 2021, we received a grant from the state of Maryland for AI development, and that kind of steered us into doing a lot more training projects, but also historical experiences, and those have all been VR. So I'm really excited to see what we could do with that, with going back in time.
Hello, my name is Connie, and I am an artist and illustrator known as Tianjin. My cards are right here. And instead of virtual reality, I have delved more into augmented reality and have been developing a book for that on and off for some time.
When we see VR, we actually imply VR, AR, MR, SR, XR. Did I miss any of the other ones? We'll at some points distinguish between AR and VR, but in general, we mean both.
My name is Jordan Higgins. I'm a human-centered engineer lead at MITRE. I'm also an adjunct professor at George Mason University. I've been designing immersive experience since around the mid-90s when I first started getting into the web. And with that, I will say, like, my number one, what I think the killer app is going to be is the web browser. I think we're going to see the web browser used.
That's not an app. That's technology. It's not a solution.
Disagree, because the web browser is going to be able to enable all sorts of applications now that it has not previously been able to, and it's going to be ubiquitous. So, anywho, that's my hill to die on. I will fight anybody who comes up. Yeah.
And he has fought with me many times over this.
Hi, I'm Will Austin. I've been in virtual reality, AR, machine learning. I've been doing this for worked in video games and interactivity there. Moved on to journalism, where we've got several awards for our investigative journalism and historical journalism using those mediums. My largest interest is seeing more and more people being able to use it, and especially on the point of accessibility, with people with different barriers to movement, vision. I think this is a great tool to help people experience more things in the world.
My name is John Nelson. I'm an independent contractor, computer scientist, bottle washer, coder, basically all things. I have a deep interest in machine learning, AI, specializing mostly in genetic algorithms, but other forms of machine learning. And I got into VR coding and development back in 5 or 10 years ago when the first VR systems started coming out. I knew that this was going to be a game changer for user interface and machine learning as well.
Okay, let's start out because there's so many different things we could talk about. What's the most innovative use of VR that you've seen or you know that's coming out?
I'm really excited to see what they can do on the history end, whether or not I'm the one doing it or not. I think that it's really interesting because the big argument with VR and something that we've dealt with when we've been contracting with different people is they say, well, why does this have to be in VR? What does this do that actually makes it worth having a VR headset and investing in it and doing all this? And, my thought is that we've got really great historical experiences in video games. I mean, Assassin's Creed, you can think of, Notre Dame. Their model was used to rebuild real Notre Dame. I think that you can go a step further with VR and be able to have these real historical experiences where you can actually be
Medieval
in the moment.
London, for example, the World War II project, which had vets
Yes.
crying, reliving, and loving it.
And it's like, I think that's something that we're very close to being able to do on a really high level, and there's no other way to do that outside of VR.
Connie?
All right. So I think one thing that I would like to see more in XR is, in the general sense. Closer?
Yes, closer.
Okay. One thing that I would like to see in the realm of XR in general is to see it being used more in a narrative overall. I've seen, when it comes to this kind of stuff, I've usually seen environments, sound tests, personal worlds and like little like mini exhibitions. I want to see it being used in more like books and maybe, well, we've seen a lot of it used in games, haven't we?
But no, like major games.
No, like major games,
I don't
right?
want to say major games, but like Half-Life Alyx is the
Mm.
only
That's-
thing that
that's the
comes to
one.
mind.
Yeah.
that
That
is
is-
the only thing that comes to mind.
Sorry,
is
what
Moss
is it?
Moss is very cool.
Moss.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
And actually, sort of building off those previous answers, I think one of the things I'm most excited about that I'm seeing in VR now, a lot of these narrative-driven virtual reality experiences are often feel a little bit like choose your own adventure books, which are at real scale, which is cool. Like I grew up on choose your own adventure books, love them, but it's very much like, you are presented with the choice, and you based on what you choose, you are go down a branch of that narrative. I've seen some really interesting examples of training applications, particularly in the area of like soft skills, like things that we have with how we interact with each other, where we're using things like facial tracking, right? Like being able to actually track facial expressions and being able to track things like body language to make better informed decisions that could affect the way that people interact with. You'll see this in games too with NPCs, right? Like if you seem nervous, then you might the characters in either a training simulation or a game or whatever may interact with you differently. It may be more intense based on that because it's trying to help you get acclimated to it. It may be more like a virtual therapy application where, based on if you seem stressed, the experience will tailor itself, in response to that. I think the potential is when we have better understanding of people's sort of emotional and sort of physiological state, we'll be able to really like dial those immersive experiences up to 11.
And there's no doubt that's going to be involving machine learning and AI.
And another thing that I would like to see more into the VR space is movement, basically. I have motion sickness. I can only last so far and so long in a virtual environment before I start getting woozy. And yeah.
I think following along with that, it's about spatial awareness on a lot of these things. There's not enough of things reading your environment. Someone's room is different from another's.
Yeah.
And to assist with that motion sickness is we should be using the machine learning that we have that's starting to be able to better understand a person's space and map it out to make you feel more comfortable with the space that you're in, so you feel accustomed.
Yeah, because our brains know that we're in a virtual space. Our body doesn't really compute.
That's one of the reasons why augmented reality has a much less possibility of making you motion sick than true
It was
VR.
more accessible to me.
My interests are sort of along the same lines. I see it as a necessary fusion between VR and AI, where AI is used to condense information, make it, shape it, and make it understandable by humans, and then shaping the conclusions of those of analysis of that data on the way out. It's sort of like if you're a software developer, it's sort of like a model view controller pattern, where you have the model, which is the context of machine learned information, and the view would be the output devices of a headset, for example, which display the abstractions of the model to the user. And then what else? Controller. You'd have the controller section where you have to interpret and fuse different inputs from the headset. So it's sort of a necessary fusion of control and data.
And I think
And only AI could handle that context. And in fact, if you think about it, it's sort of like a game.
Yeah.
It is a game.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that too, as also like there in the future it's going to be past just the headset. It's going to be this integrated ecosystem of wearable devices, of in-home sensors, and things
Haptics
that'll
and-
work, haptics, things
Yeah,
that'll work
let's talk
together.
about that. Immersive is there's a guy rule in the ergonomics in the immersive world where you have 1 + 1 is 3. The more senses you fool, the more you feel immersed in it. That's one of the reasons why 360 sound was so important for VR. Now, are we going to see more? Are we going to have a smellometic? Are we going to have a haptic feedback? What other devices? The recently Arena Void used to have wind blowing against you as well as heat and as well as smell sulfur. That was for a lava planet. Are we gonna
Elon
see-
Musk is already working on that with his BMI, brain machine interfaces, where he taps into the brain activity.
Okay, when we talk about the future, let's at least talk about within 10 years, okay?
Well,
I mean, he's doing it now, for
Yeah,
better or
he's
for
doing
worse.
it. Disabled
You-
people are starting to benefit from
Okay.
the BMIs.
Yeah.
Those
there's-
systems have been explored in a long time, for a long time. They've been
Yeah.
doing chips on the outside of the scalp for coma patients,
Yeah.
trying to sense more neural activity to better understand. So we've always been there. We've had those silly little toys about think about it, and the airburst will pop the little ping pong ball up and down.
The Jedi one,
Yeah,
yeah.
we've been playing around in this space for a long time. We're just waiting for the right breakthrough for it to become more of a mass product.
But we also have, other things in the near future. I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that your controller vibrates is one of the bigger advantages to actually have a controller versus handless.
So-
Haptic feedback, twinkling in your arms or other parts of your body has a major impact. For example, I saw one example of riding a horse in a suit that really made you feel like the horse was underneath you in a lot of ways.
Have you used the haptic feedback vests or anything?
Jeff was supposed to
Yeah.
be here for that. He's
Okay.
the expert on that.
Has
Unfortunately,
any-
he
I've
canceled.
used the Tesla suit, and I've
Oh,
used
okay.
and I've used the haptic gloves. They're out there, the air-powered ones.
There was one that they do with a vest and a belt. They're called Woozer. Does anybody know this? That was like the consumer one. Okay, does it? I don't like it. I think it's just a rumble pad attached to your waist.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and but my full prediction is I think we are really close to. I mean, we think about these brainwave things being really far in the future, but that is. Being able to trick the mind into thinking you're moving is going to be the absolute major breakthrough that is going to, I think, make this far more accessible.
You
to
don't like the
people.
treadmills that we have now?
Nope. You're going to have something that's going to do it, and it's going to be able to trick your brain.
It-
It's going to be Valve or it's going to be Sony. I think it's one of them.
It detracts from the level of immersion when it doesn't replicate the real world.
Yep.
In the real, but so one thing I was just out at CES a couple weeks ago, and one of the most exciting things I saw in the haptic space was there's a company. So if anybody's been following the world of haptic gloves, this is sort of like one of the dreams that people have, and some of the things that are out there that are really cool. There's one that I mean, it is pneumatic. It has air-driven things, and you can actually feel like a spider walking across your finger. Like the little
wow.
bursts of air actually work really well. But it's also, and they're getting ready to come out with their next gen product, which should be a little more portable. But one of the more exciting things I saw, there was a company that their approach to haptics is actually based on sort of hacking the brain. It's just like a glove that you wear over here, and it has a little like electric stimulator like on each finger, and it's based on the premise that your brain just receive, like if I touch something, it's based on receiving this like signal that goes from here to here. So it's based on this idea that if it can just like send a signal here, making you think that you've touched something, but it's so lightweight, so easy to onboard. I think we're going to see more like hacks like that are lower cost, more accessible, and I think we're going to see some really
Some of
really
those
interesting
involve
stuff on
air
that.
against your face too, because it's very startling to have air at certain moments.
Oh yeah.
And there's a sense of smell, too, which is very deeply embedded in the reptile brain. All of this tricking the brain is with little cues is known as cross-modal plasticity
Right.
in the VR world.
Now that's the more and more information for us. How about controllers? Apple's going with eye tracking, one of the very first ones. We have devices that are more and more hands-free. Other people think, well, we are going to have controllers, but they're going to be a small little wristband, like a watch or something on your hand, and they'll be able to actually track your fingers much more detailed. What do you think is the future on this?
I think it needs to be a shared space. I think the controllers do have their space, and the eye tracking has its space. My concern is if we end up leaving out certain parties. If you have poor eyesight and then you put in eye tracking as your control, well, then either we're going to have to upgrade those things, or there are certain people with barriers to vision that are not going to be able to use those devices, period. I think we need to have a wide range of control features and be accessible, adding They should be add-ons or features at that point.
I'm going
I
to be
don't think
devil's
anyone should
advocate
be-
here against that. The only problem with that is if you write a really good app with a really good user interface, you usually have to be eccentric to the input device.
But you
It's
don't-
hard to be
you don't-
general for everything.
You don't have to replicate the exact experience, but you just have to be able to provide the same level of functionality through other assistive means.
Microsoft has
So-
all those different controllers that they use, and they
Yeah.
and they just replicate the same inputs of a controller. It's
Yep.
just they're made for people with different.
So is this-
PlayStation 2
is
also
this-
really
Yeah.
good.
Is this kind of like the difference between a mouse and a joystick, or
Can
some
be.
alternate controller that you can better use?
Well, I also, I'm curious about the eye tracking because I haven't. I worked with the ALS Foundation many years ago, and they were trying to get it where they could have video games controlled by the eye movements, and it's really hard. Like
Yeah.
it's you. What I didn't even realize was that your eye moves like so fast that it's great for if you want to like track like are you looking at somebody or something with like sustained eye contact, but like I tried to make an endless runner with like a ball going through a tunnel and you controlled the ball with your eyes. It's so difficult because
Yeah.
your eyes like shoot across the
And
screen.
we're worried about
So-
eye strain. We
so-
are really seriously worried about that.
So one of the terms that we will use for this is we'll call this anticipatory interface design, right? Like trying to like the eye tracking is probably one of the most developed advanced versions of this. Is that under the premise that where we're looking is where we are meaning to focus our attention next. And I actually think AI is actually gonna be a big player in this in the very near future. All those things that made it hard, AI is going to get really, really good at understanding both
Yeah.
the environment that the user is in, the tasks that a user might be doing, piecing in stuff like where are our hands going, what are we saying, putting all these little bits of information together to get a better understanding of what user intent might be.
That's such a positive AI use. I'm
I-
so,
I-
I'm so
know,
happy that
I
we
know.
got that in there. That's
Embedded with this, I know several of you have worked with it. There is some possibilities of rendering higher resolution where you're looking,
Yeah.
which will improve your possibility of not getting nauseated. The studies seem to indicate this is a good idea.
That's a good point. The nausea is something of a predictive response, and Jordan just reminded me about a use case would be gaming. You have spatial audio, which tells you where the enemy is by locating the audio click or footsteps, and your eye probably can perceive motion quite easily. So if you detect motion up in the upper left-hand corner, your eye will immediately track up there, and you're all ready to go. You haven't even, it's been very subliminal.
Yeah.
So you're ready to go, your eye is there, and the gaze pinch motif might be more effective.
Let's swing to a different question completely. Let's talk about the commercial world. You go into an arcade nowadays, and there's a VR device, almost all VR arcades. We're starting to have VR arenas. The Void unsuccessfully failed, but for a while they were really interesting with the intellectual property of Star Wars and Marvel. Sandbox VR is starting up and doing quite well. They've just opened one in Tyson's Corner last week.
Yep.
And they have the Star Trek franchise as well as Deadwood. Are we going to start seeing places to go to play VR with your friends? And by the way, if you haven't tried one of the arenas, they give you physical walls, even though you're in VR, that you can touch. They give you blasters to hold in your hand,
Yeah.
and they do much better hand and wrist tracking than the ones you do at home. Well, are we going to see this, or is everyone going to have them at home and we don't need it?
So I love these experiences. And
What's-
anytime I see one, I will do it. But I worry about the replayability. I feel like people are going to be hungry for novel content.
Yep. They're gonna do one, and they're never gonna go back to the VR.
It's just
Yeah.
like a one-time roller coaster ride.
Maybe to
Yeah.
show different friends.
It's not like a laser tag or a battle arena where you play different scenarios.
Yeah, things, competitive sorts of things like that, where the change is the human,
Yeah.
I think is good. I think one of the biggest challenges with having virtual reality or any kind of physical tech medium that goes onto you, I don't know about you all, but the pandemic, I don't want to put somebody else's face on my face.
Yep.
And it makes the hardware a little tough to really get into. The trust that the organizations or the businesses are taking care of those things, that's really the big part for me. But outside of that, I think if we get into more of bring the competitive space instead of the single track experience, would open that up to a lot more people, because then that the human randomness is what's going to bring it in.
So would you see that it being so if you were like thinking about where to make investments in that, would you see targeting? I'm thinking anybody here in the area, in the DC area, might be familiar with the St. James, which is like a big recreational sports like mega city that has like everything and everything. Like I'm wondering, would gyms and like large fitness centers be could you see them adopting that and integrating, like making those spaces in places like that?
Possibly. I think I would say what Steve was talking about earlier. The one spot that would be acceptable of having those tracks. I couldn't put that in my house. There's no way for me to put it away. But having like the little track stations and things. The nice thing about having that is the arena that you would be participating in could absolutely change from time to time. If you're in a physical space and you're moving around in a physical space, we need padded walls so we don't kill each other.
Yeah, actually, I've talked to a couple of gyms about this. They're in favor of getting VR in there, except they're worried about tripping, and then they'll be liable for suits. So if you made it safer, they would probably bring it in. They already have, projectors, and when you're walking or riding your bike, that's one of the reasons why we're going to see VR on riding the bike first, because you don't fall over.
I think overseas, it's been used a lot with amusement parks. We're starting to see it early here, but those are really cool. I actually those are one of the coolest VR things I think I've ever gotten to see. I was at a conference, and there was a guy whose entire
Korea?
company. No, it's in Europa Park, Germany. Okay. Germany has, I think, 3 of them now, but they're really. They have an underwater one that like fully functions, and like the headset can go underwater and it can do a whole experience. And then but it's all on tracks. So what's nice is that you don't have to worry about anything happening to anybody because you're in a confined space. And what's also great is people don't get sick from them because you're moving, and your movement along the roller coaster is matching the VR space, so it's actually a lot more accessible. And like those are great, but I think Europa Park's like over $100 to get into for a day. Like it's.
You mean at Disney World?
Well, yeah, exactly, exactly. Like it's something that I think if you have it where it's cheap. I mean, I think I mentioned it yesterday in Pittsburgh. If anybody can go to the National Aviary, they have a really cool VR experience called Birdly. It's like $5 or $10, and that is one of the most worthwhile things I've ever done. They're really cool, and they use like fans to simulate like the air blowing when you dive as a bird and you're flying through these different cities. So like that's really cool. But then you mentioned VR arenas, and I think of like Vegas. And if anybody's been to Vegas, in the MGM they have one, and it's astronomical per person to go in and play a single game. Like it's something like that where I'm like, am I really gonna do that? Like, is that gonna be my Vegas experience? Because that's how expensive it feels to do them.
Okay, let me ask a couple other questions here, then we'll open it up to the audience. Who are going to be the big names? I already mentioned the fact that Quest seems to be the winner so far. Vive had an early lead, but they've seemed to have disappeared in the arena, at least in the United States. PSVR is so incredibly game-oriented, you don't see anything else on that. And then, of course, Apple's the new guy on the block. But we also have a whole bunch of other ones. Some of them are in $10,000 range. Some of them are just niche market. We have Magic Leap, which, yeah. Are we only going to have a few big names, or are we going to go with a whole bunch of names?
There's a lot of stuff that's going to be coming to the market in the next like few years. I think one of the big players that I don't think gets anywhere near enough attention is Snap. Their lens platform, and their if and when they roll out another like update to the glasses, I think it's gonna be a major milestone.
Yeah, but having small niche machines out there is not mainstreaming it.
I don't think they're planning on it being niche. I think they're thinking
Okay.
mainstream. I just think they're being very under the radar right now.
It's probably too early to tell in the,
Marketing will tell.
yeah,
Connie?
first to market is rarely first to survive.
Okay, let's, any questions from the audience so far? You've enjoying yourselves? Okay. Who has questions? Gentleman on the right.
So maybe like one of the days first, I shipped the PSVR game. I'm friends with all the guys at Moss. I worked with them to run that. I was at Magic Leap for a little tiny bit.
My condolences.
So the way I look at it is, and we made like the most unique control system for a PSVR game ever, and it made everybody sick, which was wonderful. But and so I'm sorry with this. Your name is
Sam. Or
Sam.
Sam.
Yeah, Sam. You said something that I think is really important because I always see these panels, and this is not a complaint, but I always see everybody wanting to talk about things that are alike across the spectrum, which is almost always in the optics and maybe 3D audio and stuff like that, which is common to VR, AR, XR, the whole thing. But there is the commercial application is going to be the person in their home sitting down. That I'm telling you, that is the thing. Because that's the only way people are safe.
Yeah.
And that's actual VR. When you go to an arcade, I don't think we should call that VR because you're moving through a space and there's walls and there's objects.
A lot of people call that XR for exactly that reason you just mentioned,
That
Dara.
sounds reasonable.
What you need to solve for XR and what you need to solve for AR is not anywhere near what you need to solve for what I think is VR, which is me sitting at home by myself, or even multiplayer fun. But I mean, it's still, you have to be safe. You have to be sitting down, so you're not going to fall. You're not going to step on the cat. You're not going to hit the kid.
We got along pretty well with the Wii, learning not to hit people or hitting your TV.
Even that wasn't perfect.
No, that wasn't perfect.
You still break the TV with the controller.
How not to take the cat when you're being asked to stand up playing VR.
No, I
Are going to fall, but it's the motion sickness because
yes.
you get to the point where sitting on the couch in a virtual world, and I'm telling you, we can create that right now.
Yes. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Beautiful, as long as you don't stick with the move.
Yep.
If you start moving, you lose 40-50% of the audience within 5 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
You lose 80% within an hour. I mean, you can't have an immersive, narrative-driven story unless you can spend 2-3 hours without getting a neck ache, without getting sick.
Yeah.
What is the future of really focusing on that motion sickness that happens only in those cases?
The film industry had this down for years ago, having to do with 3D glasses they had in the theaters. And they came out with the statistics that pretty much, and this was done by several directors of photography who did massive research, about 10% of the people just can't handle it. And another 10%, so the 20% they're looking at, were uncomfortable in it when there was motion like you described. And that number seemed to be pretty much duplicated in the research I've seen here. For mechanical motion. His question is going to tie in a lot to with one of my next ones about AR versus VR, because AR solves a lot of that problem, and some of us think the AR is more important.
Yeah. And
That's what people want. People want the Matrix. You remember the PSVR's code name was
yes. But I mean,
Do people want that though?
well, I mean,
That's-
you're 100% right. I mean, you have Skyrim VR and you have Fallout VR, and they're both incredible, but they make people sick. I mean, the very first reason why I ever bought a VR headset was because I saw Mirror's Edge, and I said, "Wow, I want to play that in VR." You've been able to do that for 6-7 years. I
Yeah.
played GTA 5 in VR, but it's
Jordan's going
you
to
get
have a
sick.
point against you, I think.
Well,
Go
no,
ahead.
no, I want, and I don't mean it as a challenge. I'm just kind of like it's something that I think that needs to be validated. Like, do people think they want that but not actually want it, or is it something that they actually, is it truly what they desire out of these experiences?
they absolutely want it if it worked without any nausea and without any neck ache. If you can
Yeah.
feel like you're truly immersed in a virtual world and you can navigate it and go any place you want and just and explore anything you want and have magical powers and all sorts of stuff, people would eat that up.
That's also very
I would
important
love
to
to see like
educate-
validated market research on that. Because
There-
I'm curious. I'm curious about consumer perceptions now that more people have had a chance to.
That's not going to work because you have to have it first before you can get market.
No, that's a
Yes.
chicken and egg. That
Well, no.
Then it's a chicken
I
and the
think
egg
you have a
thing,
very
yeah.
very big point, because you're right. Nobody's been able to do it, and it's that as soon. How are we going to know? How are we going to know if somebody wants to actually sit in Skyrim for 12 hours and play it? I'm pretty sure that almost all of you here have probably sat in a game for 10 to 12 hours and played it. But would you want to do that in a VR setting? Who knows? Because we don't know if you can do it without getting sick.
That probably would be
It would be-
healthy
Are-
to sit there for
I want
12
to mention
hours
it very
at a time.
quickly that is a really important thing for education, because virtual field trips, both historical and geographic, are very important, and that's a reason alone to have it. Go on.
Sorry. Okay, so there are two ways that I could think of at the top of my head as to achieve movement in VR
You'll be next.
by standing still. One is to basically sit, right. One is to basically teleport, which is, I don't think it's something that people are really looking for, which is, it kind of like breaks the immersion of it. I've tried that before as well. Another is this device, I forgot the name of it, but it looks like an egg, and you sit on it, and you just like move around in your seat to stimulate movement.
That one actually makes me nauseous. I've tried it. The disconnect between the motion and the
Yeah.
It actually,
It's like riding a
Anyone remember
mini horse, so I
Lawnmower
don't
Man?
know.
yeah.
Anyone remember Lawnmower Man that thought everyone who's going to do VR was
forgot
going
what
to
it
be
was
in one of
called.
those twirling balls? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was convinced that was going to be the future.
I'd like to add something to this, an observation about Apple. When they released or announced the Vision Pro, the video footage showed people sitting in their couches.
Yep.
And just sitting. They
Always.
weren't waving their arms around, and they weren't
They're really
flying
concerned about
around.
Gorilla Arm, which is an issue.
Yeah, so I think that Apple, very cleverly, as they usually are.
Let's move on a little bit. You had a question here,
that's
sir?
very deliberate. That was a good-
Switch hand track.
Yeah.
I got to try it for the first time with the Quest 3 when I got one really recently, and it still feels kind of like not quite.
Oh, does it really? That's a shame.
It's like you're still holding a controller, right?
Well,
Yeah.
it's like you try to go and point at something, and then you want to actually select it, and you go to close your hands, but then it actually tracks your hand as being slightly off from where it was pointing, and then it's you play the can I actually touch it game.
I 100% feel like what you're saying on that one. And the only thing I can say is that like one of the advantages to the Quest platform that I've noticed is they are very, very good about making pretty dramatic like experience updates through software updates. And it's
That came out in the alpha, and I think it was still in alpha when they released it. It will
gets-
get better.
It
but-
gets better incrementally. It's been making. I'm sorry, you had a question.
My actual question leading up to that was, do you see other companies going for hand tracking
Yes.
similarly,
Yeah.
or where do you see hand tracking?
Well, this is kind of back
Yeah.
into our question on the controllers. They're going to be more
There's
than one.
there,
Go
there's a
ahead.
whole mentality around natural computing about think how people interact with computers in Star Trek, right? There's this idea that the more natural the experience will be, the less we have to there's some things that we'll always need sort of the precision of a controller for, and I think that'll be really dependent on use case. But the not just hand tracking, but I think broadly a more natural, the way we interact with each other and the world, we want to try to replicate that in immersive environments too.
I'd like to add to that, I think the most important controller we're going to have in the future is voice input. When they started adding voice input to the Quest, it made a major change. Voice isn't good for certain things, but for an incredible amount of information in a short time, it's very good. Be able to jump around, and now that we have machine language, that it's, yeah.
Steve, that's where
Trying to get into like Skyrim VR because I hadn't tried it yet.
Yeah.
And I saw mods for like being able to do shouts with your
Yeah,
voice.
and you can do crazy things with it. Yeah, but it doesn't work. But it feels super janky, and it doesn't work properly. Yeah.
Tried it yet.
It will get better. John, you were going to say something?
Yeah, this is where AI comes in. If you're a squad leader and you want your squad to follow a certain pattern of attack, you don't want to give out individual instructions to every guy. What you want to do is just say plan B, and everybody knows what to do, and they can adapt to different situations. Maybe plan B is going to...
I literally yelled out in the void, "Don't shoot the Dark Lord," when Darth Vader showed up. The lady in the middle-ish, you had your hand up for a while. Right there, yes. Yes. Yeah.
So this is kind of more of a community comment because all four of us kind of share this. We're like kind of the VR chat stands over here.
Very popular.
Very popular, yes.
Made your comment about nobody knows if people could be in VR for 12 hours or if they want to be. We actually have the data that says they do, and they do. People actually sleep in VR chat. There's groups literally dedicated. I've done it before.
Yeah.
People have been sleeping in the cave for
Yeah.
20 years.
I mean,
because of version of
I don't
VR.
doubt that there's like a subset of the VR population that would want it. The question that I have is, as somebody who would design and potentially like try to, create experiences for mass adoption, I'm very curious about the thresholds on that and the general like earth.
I think that there, when it comes to professionals in the industry, because we also work in the industry, more attention needs to be paid to VR chat by the industry because the amount of data available.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You could actually get this data.
Yep. I feel the same way about Roblox too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just a wealth of just like everything VR. It is kind of
If you don't mind me
That's a great
asking,
point. Thank you.
Isn't VR chat also open source in a way?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I mean, I have not gotten to experience VR chat myself, but I am curious about being in it for a long period of time. The most that I can do VR in one sitting is like 2 or 3 hours if it's something I'm like really, really in love with. Like, how does 6, 7, 8 feel? Like, do you feel fine afterwards? Okay, great.
We might have a
Because,
VR.
well, yes, and I also wonder because VR chat social rooms. I wonder trying to have that with like Skyrim-esque combat, or if you're riding on a horse. I feel like when you add more movements, it becomes a lot more complicated, and who can take it for so long.
Well, and I worry about the physiological effects too. I wonder. I would actually like to kind of really learn more, I guess, about
It's
what is the
early.
effect on your
We
vision.
might have a
and
VR
things
chat
like that.
panel next year because
Yeah,
this has
I-
popped up
I-
like 3 times now.
I'm making a note to spend more time in VR chat after this. I
Same
appreciate
here.
the insight.
If I get a headset, then I'll consider.
Why don't you go first, and
Maybe
then
I'll
the
last
gentleman in the
about
red
half an hour
second.
at best.
My question was on what would you do with controllers? Like the Vive has very specific controllers that use the gesture pads.
Yeah.
But a lot of like the original Oculus and stuff were just an Xbox controller or other standard cable.
Individual finger control is very important. There was some research done with bands around your hand, which basically do the sense. Magic Leap does it. Who are some of the other ones that are doing it? Now, the problem with doing it with visually with a camera is you get one hand covering the other hand, and it happens a lot. And there also is the problem. Apple's solution with the camera facing down is so that your hand can be down here, because they're really afraid of gorilla arm. Gorilla arm is when you have your arm out for an hour or two. It's the reason why Apple doesn't have a flat panel screen. They did not want to get in that arena. If you can do it when your hand is supported, it's much better than having it be in the air. And anything I missed there? I guess that covers most of the stuff.
Well, if you're disabled, of course
Yes.
you can't, you can't use a mouse like if you have carpal tunnel syndrome or Parkinson's disease or arthritis or any number of other disabilities. You would want to, find an alternative controller, and which would, I don't know.
Back
use the
tie into the
fingers.
fact that we shouldn't have one size fit all.
Well, I think it really has to, as a designer, I think it really has to, you have to pick the right tool for the right job. What is the user trying to accomplish here? And what is the right mode of interaction to support that?
Does that technically mean we could see like more 3D printed controllers where people might start just having a bundle of switches and it's like slot these into
Oh, yeah.
There
Yeah,
is a
check-
standard for that in China, an open source VR as part of the VR open source project. It didn't get adopted in the United States as much. I don't know why.
And I think as we start to adopt more of this type of technology, as VR headsets become less expensive, as hardware becomes more trustworthy. I know one of the challenges is you buy this expensive headset and then the software doesn't support the hardware anymore, and so your trust in a product is gone down. As we start to build that up, I think you'll start seeing other companies getting into this vector, where you have, I'm not making headsets, but I'm making accessories and things that go along with it. We see that in consoles all the time, that you get new ones coming out of things to make things more comfortable or for a certain style of entertainment.
Who has a wheel that they put their Wii controller inside so they can do Mario Kart?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one of the most popular ones out there. Gentleman in red, you had a question. Oh, you forgot. Okay, who's one next? Gentleman in blue over here.
I think one of the biggest things that will need to be a leap forward with VR hardware and software is standardization, like what they have for PC parts.
I'll let someone else take that question, but I would like to point out I don't think it's a technical question. I think it's a commercial question.
I'll jump in on this one first. I'm a member of the W3C's Immersive Web Working Group, where there's a lot of the industry players on both the hardware and the software side are working to establish exactly those standards for both hardware and software specs to make sure that things can work similar to how they work with sort of the web now. And this is one of the reasons why I am so enthusiastic about the web as a platform for delivering immersive experiences. I think that ability to create something that's a standards compliant with accessibility in mind, thing that hardware and software manufacturers and experience designers can start to develop towards, will really level that playing field to make it more, hopefully, open and fuel innovation. There've been so many limitations up till now, but things like Web GPU, which came up yesterday, a lot of these things are starting to fall into place to really lay the groundwork for that ecosystem.
How will that not stifle innovation if everyone has to have a standard?
Well, I don't think we're there yet.
Okay.
I don't think VR has reached the point that we can even talk about standardization. I mean, I think that to your question originally, what needs to happen to fix that motion sickness? Once you get that, then I think people can start to look at, okay, we've got this core thing that makes it accessible to as many people as possible. How can we build off of that? But I mean, this is still the Wild West. I mean, you're still having so many people trying different things. I mean, you talk about different companies making different controllers. You've got all these people doing different haptic sensors and different treadmills and all these millions of different things. I mean, what it was 1921, we had 1,000 independent car manufacturers in the U.S.
Right.
It's like that's where we are. It's like everybody's really close. We're right there, but somebody has to make that major breakthrough, make that killer app, make something that allows for that standardization.
But as soon as
to
they
be
do it,
possible.
they'll be duplicated by everyone else. The problem we have right now is a lot of the companies out there, right or wrong, think they want to be distinctive.
Yep.
Distinctive means non-standard.
But it's essential for adoption and for growth. That's why standards are established. That's why the number one thing that the web did when it first came out was establish a standards body to fuel innovation.
That's a bad example because what was the very first thing Microsoft did is they came out with a very good Microsoft tool which made a non-standard web.
But I think that's a good example of why standards are important.
Yes.
The things that weren't standards compliant failed. But the broader ecosystem took off like wildfire.
And we also are going to have to be affected by a political. The European Union has shown that they want standards and they're willing to override people. And right or wrong, they are very powerful.
It's
Gentlemen on the
essential.
far left, you've had your hand up for a while.
I noticed in the industry it's always the desire to design apps with the lowest common denominator. And I've also noticed on other things that it seems the way to bypass the motion sickness is to have compelling apps. Have you all tried sacrificing some comfort for more compelling content?
Connie, this is right up your alley. Trying to invoke emotion in their storytelling.
Sorry, what was the question again?
Okay, well,
The question basically is motion sickness. It seems like everybody's building apps towards comfort, so less motion sickness for users. But in the process of doing that, they're making apps that don't compel a lot of people to play.
so you want to have more emotional apps or more apps with extreme behavior?
Yeah, I appreciate. Yeah, I appreciate the thought on it, but I fundamentally feel like intentionally exploiting the technology to make people uncomfortable. We'll do things in the experience to expose people to things that might stress them based on the content of the experience itself, but not based on hacking around the comfort level of using the technology itself.
Having said that, there are quite a few successful horror apps which make use of the dark area and jumping out at you.
Maybe we didn't understand the question though.
Motion sick. Yeah,
Oh.
I was talking more about motion sickness.
No. So that's what I mean. I wouldn't
Roller
hack
coaster?
into someone's. I wouldn't try to make someone more motion sick.
No, we're not trying to deliberately make them motion sick. I'm just trying to say instead of making compensation for motion sickness, making parts that could theoretically make people more sick.
So I'm not sure I'm understanding. Would it be giving the user control over like dialing down the setting that would help compensate for it?
Oh, you mean like having the choice? I mean, some games include the choice, and
Yeah.
I really appreciate having that choice because
Yeah.
I agree. If I'm teleporting in a game, it's not doing it for me. It's
And-
really like that's the immersion gone,
Yeah.
and it's something where I don't think people are going to remove it. I think it's that how do I say this? There are developers that 100% feel that way and want to include it. It's just that they're going to try and reach the largest customer base, and are they going to include those features because they know people want them?
And I think also a big part of this too is just principles of user design and user experience that
Yeah.
is corely being missed out on these developments. The idea of the why when you're moving around, you're getting the motion sickness. How do you change that? For the position of people don't want to be up all the time. Well, why aren't we in part of our stories making moments of respite?
Yeah.
That is part of the experience. When you look at cinema in design, like Spielberg's favorite thing to do is to get you to calm down before he brings your heart rate up.
Yeah.
We can do that within design to help ease people in and out of those experiences to make it more comfortable and get people to start feeling their body getting more acclimated. So it's almost like deep water diving. You know, we need to give those moments of breaks, and we need to use our space around the user, get them to be able to set it up to work toward the space and their accessibility, and then give them zones of movement within those. So you have the idea of what I can directly touch, what I can see, and what is a vista. So we can be able to build those spaces. It's really about the design and not about the actual hardware itself.
Yeah, and I think there's some titles out there too that do a really good job of allowing the users to set those settings. Beat Saber comes immediately to mind and Pistol Whip's another. There, some of the bigger titles that really take some of those their and if anybody's really interested in the technical aspects of this, dive into the MetaQuest developer documentation for accessibility settings. Like they have practices around how to like tie into your narrative design, like how you're creating peaks and valleys in the experience to drive to those memorable moments, but then also how to give the user some control that lets them really fine tune it.
I know
Some
that
of the-
it's not
sorry.
a VR game, but The Last of Us 2 does have maybe hundreds of accessibility options.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Some of
80
it's was
them.
physically
I
where
forgot
you
the
were
number.
at. Some of my designs for some of my games I'm working on have
Yeah.
modes where it
That's a
does
great
it
call.
180 when you're in a chair,
Sony's
and then
doing that
360 when you're
too.
standing up or in a swivel chair. And they appreciate the fact that they can have a choice. Same game, but that way.
I think keeping those choices is really important, and I don't think people want to get rid of it. Like Bethesda wants you to walk across Skyrim in VR. It's just they're trying to find the best way to do it.
Are you guys enjoying yourselves? Yeah. Okay, now we have 5 more minutes in the official talk. We are also the last talk of the day, and I'm sure we're willing to stay up here and talk for longer if you're willing to stay.
Notice with the stuff, especially industry and
Okay.
like in the VR space with the years, that people are sacrificing compelling input and experiences in VR for comfort, and that's making certain apps just not compelling.
I'm sure this is going to be an area of experimentation more than anything else because a commercial application programmer is not going to design something that limits its market. That's just
Maybe
the way
maybe
it
the
is.
decision should be left to the user to go into VR, not go into VR, go into a light VR mode or augmented reality.
Yeah, I really want to follow up and ask what experiences out there you think would be more compelling. I think that could be a whole other panel about where missed opportunities are. But maybe we can talk after.
They're the people who like XP, extreme XR, extreme reality. The gentleman with the blue ears have been very patiently holding his hand up, so let me go. And thank you for being distinctive enough for me to be able to point you out.
So on the motion sickness question, so diving a little deeper, what is the state of play in research into motion sickness? How much do we really understand the physiology of the core problem? How much of the effort in the space is dedicated towards researching and truly understanding that versus it sounds like the commercial companies in particular are doing this
We've been researching this problem for 200 years because people get seasick. And it's the same research. Matter of fact, CES 2 years ago had a company who had been having out seasick pills and seasick wristbands that give you a little electrical shock. They were marketing it for VR. So this is not an untouched area.
I mean, there's a lot of people that are like, sorry, I mean, Jordan can talk more to like specifics, but it's going to be a big, like, it's the big companies. Like, I mean, Sony's been trying to figure it out for years. It's just, you know, nobody knows because the like clearest answer seems, you know, do the neuron, what are they, the like synapse connections they've been testing, like. Maybe it's
some
like
people will
that's
not
that's
accept
what they're
that.
trying.
Some of the training that they give you through both Meta or it used to be Facebook and Vive in the early days specifically talked about if you're going to be a Superman flying through the air, fuzz the edges around the air level that makes it better. And some of these are very simple ideas, and a lot of us we've already been taught that. So.
I mean, you're at a point now where we're seeing in the consumer level devices, you're seeing them start to implement some of the features that have been a result of that research.
Right.
And the companies like Meta, Google, Apple have been able to put just, you know, armies of researchers into this in collaboration with a lot of like academic partners. If you go into like Google Scholar and kind of use the search term motion sickness and virtual reality, there's you can kind of tell by like, you know, which pieces get cited the most, where like the most like influential research has been. But you know, you actually see in the developer documentation now a lot of the outputs of that, like the idea of you know, maintaining a constant frame rate in each eye, the importance of having a proper fit, and you're seeing like things where, you know, instead of like where the Quest 2 initially had sort of 3 different settings that were designed to accommodate the widest number of users, the Quest 3 and the Quest Pro have little sliders that kind of digitally let you really dial in the IPD, the distance between your pupils. And I think broadly, it comes down to fit. Like the reason that a lot of people have a bad experience at VR at someplace like an arcade is that they're designed to quickly onboard people into the device as quickly as possible, and then they get out of it like right away. They don't really have that time to kind of fine tune it to their comfort level. But there's a lot of other like things that are going on to really get to that next level of best practices and mitigating.
And I.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I.
Those got better and better, but I know personally that Hideo Kojima cannot play first-person shooters.
And I think.
So, but because it's a smaller percentage that way, you can have a market for everybody else, but it's flipped from VR, and that's the problem. We can't.
I don't think we're ever going to solve some of these problems.
Yeah.
If we take it from 40% down to 10%.
Yeah. We're going to move on for another question because this is we've covered this one right now. If you don't mind, the gentleman in the blue multicolor shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a question that goes back to we were talking about standards a little bit on VR chat. Do you think that we're, like right now we have a bunch of companies that are trying to be like the quote unquote the metaverse. Do you think we're going to hit a point where a standard's going to be built that they'll be able to drop, or will it be figure lens where it's standard?
Yeah.
Working in the game industry, I think it's going to be really tough because do you think EA is ever going to want to share any asset with Ubisoft? Do you think that's going to be one of the challenges? Like, look at what Epic is doing right now, of building this playground universe, same thing as Roblox. They want people to develop in their platforms. So I don't think they're going to want to share a lot of those things. I think we're going to see a lot of walled gardens first.
Yeah.
And then we're going to start getting a little bit more procedurally generative things, especially as we get into more utopian AI and ML. But at first, it's going to be a series of like, this is the platform. You use our platform. We're going to give you a wealth of things that independent people can create and sell into a marketplace too.
Right.
But it's not going to be in between.
So what Roblox gets really right about that is making the content creation tools super easy. Like people are gonna stay inside those walled gardens because that's where they're able to. I mean, there's small companies of like 3+ people that do nothing but run their own Roblox worlds. I think the metaverse as it evolves, it's going to be lowercase m. It's not going to be any one metaverse. But look at the internet now, like Epic. I mean, all of these experiences, all these walled gardens now that exist in sort of this traditional like paradigm of computing, they all run on the internet as a backbone, and that's where I think you're going to see that emerge with spatial experiences as well.
I'd like to point out that we still have walled gardens for text messaging.
Yeah,
we
there's
have
always going to be
Signals, Facebook chat, SMS. You name it, and they haven't solved that problem.
While they're doing this, while they're hosting all these activities, if they're clever and
Thanks for coming.
if they're smart, they're going to collect and aggregate the data generated by all those users, and they're going to fine-tune their products and possibly vend out that data and apply it towards creation of better tools.
I really like what Epic's doing. I think that they're the most viable thing that I've seen in terms of that, because it's really hard to make a standard. I mean, you've still Unity and Unreal aren't the only engines that are out there, and I mean, nobody, like there are so many, and we still don't have a full standard for that. But what I really like about Epic, and I hope we can start seeing it in a bunch of the programs as well. You're right. I don't think the EAs and the major companies are going to come around immediately. But anybody that knows how to use Unreal Engine can now make content in Fortnite, and it all talks to each other, and it's really valuable. That, like, imagine if you made a car in a game. Well, now you can use that car in anything else that works with Unreal Engine. So I don't think we're going to have a standard, quite like one singular thing. But I think it's going to get smaller.
Now, I think there is going to be possibly one standard that would be outside of these platforms. It's going to be the softwares that create the art forms themselves. Like, I could see Blender coming out way on top by making a universal export system.
God, I hope.
So that way, where we have all these little, all these small M's that you'll be able to go, here's my character, here's the walk cycles, and checkbox, 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 export. Yeah. And then that way, just like what we have right now with social media platforms, we have devices and services that can export out to all those mediums. Yeah. I can see that as being a thing. So making multi-platform publishing easier.
Apple has already started that with their USD format started by Pixar.
Yes.
Yeah, the USD format has been a game changer for creating any sort of a lot of this sort of content. I also think anybody who's interested in this stuff, check out Roblox Studio. Even if you've never stepped foot in Roblox, the way that they have built their content creation tool, this is why their numbers in growth and adoption are staggering, and it's again I can't say it enough. The ability for non-technical users to imagine something and realize it in the virtual environment space, and I mean it only it makes it portable inside of the Roblox universe, but it's that content creation process. So like Unity, to reach that same level of adoption, it's going to have to get a whole lot easier to use for people. And it's pretty easy to like it has a relatively smooth learning curve.
Yeah, they've all been trying to make it easier to get into them because that's what they want. They want to be adopted.
Right.
Let's have the gentleman with the mask here. You had your hand up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's doing really out there input method or sensory input research?
Universities, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is popping out. The papers you're talking about come from the universities.
Yeah, I wish Craig were here.
I was
Craig Yu at George Mason is.
He's got some really incredible projects.
Now,
Craig Yu.
I do know Microsoft is also doing it in their research labs, some of this similar stuff. But most of it's coming out like the MIT and other types.
But yeah, I mean, I broadly though, it's good. The next few years are going to be wild with people thinking about alternative means of using our existing senses and it's interesting that you mentioned the strip of the forehead on the skin one, like right, like our skin is our largest sensory organ, which means a lot of available real estate to think about new paradigms of like human machine interaction. So it's gonna be wild.
I'm going to have we'll take more questions. We'll be answering afterwards, but I'm going to finish this up and ask each one of you to talk about what you think is the most important thing we're going to come in the future. Okay, and I will start by saying we got to get off of Unity and Unreal. It is too technically difficult to work. We need to be able to create content, 360 videos. We need a hypercard stack for VR. Something
You
that
can do that in Unreal.
Yeah.
You can like.
Yeah.
I don't want like I don't. I won't dig too much into it. Unreal at least has-
non-programmers need to get into VR to be able to create content.
And that's where I think we get a lot, like, I wish that, you could use the Fortnite editor to make VR content, because it's great with how easy it is to get into it. And the nice thing with just Unreal is that it's all visual based. I can't program to save my life, but I've made 4 video games because I can understand the logic of nodes.
Yeah.
And like, it's nice because they use that for
I
broadcasting.
would
They've used it
still
for
say
utility
that's a
tools.
high threshold of knowledge for that. It's not as easy as a hypercard. I can create content using PowerPoint for a layout. I need to have that level of
I'm
creativity.
telling you, Roblox is
this
doing
man
it
right
now.
here
Okay,
made
that's
a
good. Well,
1400
then
game
if
in
we
PowerPoint.
can
You
do
can
it,
do anything
I'm
in
happy.
these engines.
We need more of it. What's your talk?
You,
What's your,
you
what's your
need,
thing?
you need Roblox for everything, though. You
Agreed.
need Roblox for the entire lowercase metaverse, not just
Yeah.
Roblox.
Speaking of which, has anybody heard of Code Miko? Yes, she is. I believe that she is developing something on Unreal Engine 5 that allows multiple avatars to like get together in various worlds and stuff. Similar to VR chat, I think. I haven't looked deeply into it yet.
Yeah.
But I do believe she knows what she's doing. So I do expect more walled gardens in the future. And these walled gardens are going to become even bigger walled gardens. They're probably going to be a walled garden forest at this rate.
I really think that it's going to come as soon as somebody figures out that motion sickness breakthrough. I mean, I think I said the same thing at our talks last year, is it's like, that's what they're working on. That's what they're spending millions of dollars trying to figure out. And like, it's been really interesting to see some of those synapse receptors, is it's like how people can use things with their brain waves. But even that, like, I think it's going to be the same problem. People just want to sit on their couch, put on their VR headset, and play Skyrim for 12 hours and not even have to think about it. And it's like, you don't want to have to hook up a whole bunch of sensors to your head to try and track all these things. But I think it's near future.
Yeah.
I truly think that, like, maybe next year we're going to be here talking about how incredible Sony's motion sickness thing is. I think it's in 2 or 3 years. You're going to figure it out.
If I can like exist in a virtual world and not want to have the urge to purge for at least an hour, that is a win.
So I think along with that, it's like we've done this panel, what, 3 or 4 plus years now. I feel like we're always kind of in this like it's 5 to 10 years out, and I think this may be the first time it doesn't feel like it's that far away. If we think about the adoption rate of technology, we're still in kind of like, we compare this to like mobile phones, we're still kind of just getting out of that briefcase phone stage from the early 80s. Like we are still on that very slow ramp where we're about to see something. What's going to make it catch fire? I don't know. Is it going to be the Vision Pro? I don't know. But my final comment on this is just going to be one last plug for WebXR. I think this is our time. Like we have been looking at the web as a place to develop 3D experiences for ages, and now immersive experiences. We are seeing all the stars align. I think it's going to be a really exciting time for that as a platform. Check out if you look up the WebXR Awards, you can see some of the most forward-thinking people out there doing stuff. I developed a few years ago a web AR app that actually worked on any mobile phone, where you could scan a quarter and George Washington would come to life and play a game of 2 truths and a lie, trivia type of game with you. I mean, it was it was really cool. But those sort of magical experiences in different platforms, I think.
Something along the lines of what Eighth Wall is doing, right?
Yeah, we actually looked at Eighth Wall, but it was there were some reasons why we couldn't do that. We ended up using a very portable JavaScript. Like, there was a lot of wizardry that went into this under the hood.
Yeah.
And I think with any of these new technologies, you have to be ready for an update to come out that'll break everything you've done. But yeah, Eighth Wall has some really good starter project templates that are kind of around the use cases that you see for what they are. They're a little expensive. So there's also like open source platforms like A-Frame and some other things out there that are but the biggest challenge really has been that the browsers haven't been as compliant with it. And ironically, Apple, their Safari on iOS has been very resistant. They want to keep people in mobile apps. But then supposedly the Vision Pro is going to be one of the most WebXR compliant browsers out there. So we'll see what happens, but that's my prediction for this year. Is I think that with that level of support, we're going to see some breakthrough moments in the WebXR world, and maybe next year we can check in and see how that prediction worked out.
Next, for me, kind of going off a little bit of what you're talking about, I feel like the big thing that will help us spring forward is a lot more of casual, high engagement interactivity on mobile front. It's your dipping your toe in the water. The biggest problem that we have right now, everything phone is pretty much gimmick. Everything's rear-facing or front-facing camera, all filters on the face. I would love to see like Instagram. You swipe down, there's an AR piece. You tap the screen, rear-face camera, instant interactivity.
Snap.
Yes, Snap. I want to see more of that. But a lot of the storage on that, like you were talking about Eighth Wall, you have to pay a monthly subscription per experience. The average Joe can't afford that kind of thing. So being able to get more into that so people can casually dip in and out of their immersive XR experience so they can have more or less of the physical world around them will get you more acclimated, and it's part of that deep sea water diving thing. We're just trying to get through the bends. John?
Well, you can get through the bends with a fusion of machine learning, AI, and target devices and mode of operation, which is VR. If you have software that evolves and adapts to the environment, you can, I think, spring forward pretty strongly.
What do you think is going to be the future and most important next year, John?
This year?
Yeah.
Ooh, well, I think Vision Pro this year is pretty short term for the future, but I think Vision Pro is going to set a standard only by the innovation.
Level of consumer interest.
Yeah.
The eye tracking alone is going to be
But
something
the
interesting.
price point is going to prevent widespread adoption. It'll be mostly early adopters.
Yeah, although I do think about every time you walk by an Apple store, it's mobbed with people. And they're checking out products that have been on the market for ages. I think a lot of people are going to try out a Vision Pro in the stores that would have never stopped to do a demo of a Quest or something like that.
Well,
a lot of people are going to see it for the first time.
Keep in mind that, just to be a devil's advocate, the phone, the iPhone, is a pretty pricey device for a phone. I mean, it's just a phone.
Yeah.
Come on, how much is it going to cost?
I'm going to switch to the audience here because we have someone over in the corner who's in our panel and should have been in our panel today, except he was late. Alan, did you want to bring anything up about the future?
Yeah, along what Jordan was talking about, I was wondering, mobile phones were large boxes in the 80s, and they shrunk down. And they were just phones. And they shrunk down past, what they should have been, and then they blew back up a little bit. And they settled on a capacitive screen. What do you think VR is going to settle down to? Is it going to be glasses? Is it going to be brain hacking?
Great question.
With the exception of education, I think AR is more important than VR in the long term.
That's why I think we're going to get mixed headsets for that reason. That I think the big winner is going to be the one. I appreciate what Magic Leap is doing in this.
Yes.
Getting in selective occlusion is going to be a huge win. Being able to have portions of your world visible and see-through so that way you can take a break is going to be a huge win for that. I think that partial way vision will make you feel safer because you have to block off much of your world to do VR. And I think having that ability to, oh, somebody's coming, I can quickly switch over or change my occlusion, it's going to be huge.
That's what
So-
part of Apple has that in some of their Vision Pro examples.
I think if we look at like investments that a lot of the large companies have been making as sort of like indicators of where it's going, Meta, Apple, Samsung, Lenovo, like a lot of these big players, they're all like making like they're snatching up technology and patents related to this sort of form factor. Like that's I think we're going to see the Apple sent a very finally after years and years of hype have sent this shot heard around the world. Now we're going to see the returning volley of fire, and I think we're going to see Meta's next gen glasses, Snap's next gen glasses, Google maybe, I don't know, who knows, but like I think the form factors we're going to see emerge are going to be more towards this than towards like headsets as we've known them.
We didn't talk about, but there's also a real important thing in the future having to do with social impact. As Google Glass showed, people are a little uncomfortable. They are absolutely uncomfortable talking with someone whose eyes face is completely covered for the Quest. The one with Apple's, we'll see whether or not Apple's iView, which is basically a front-facing screen, will make a difference. HoloLens is more acceptable, but then the HoloLens Vision is not very good VR, so...
It's very clunky.
Well,
yeah,
I
and
think that they're like...
There's no HoloLens.
Yeah, their
Yeah.
interface is also kind of small the last time that I tested it out.
Yeah.
It's not big. It's just like this like small like square where you can see the...
To have socially acceptable AR devices you can walk around with is going to have your face be more exposed. And we are building the screens for doing it, but if you think Apple's device is expensive, the cost of those screens are even more expensive.
Much of the communication between people is by body language, facial expression, and the prediction of what they're thinking and what they're going to say before they say it. And I think that's going to be... Making the device socially acceptable means making it transparent.
Yeah, and it's really interesting too, kind of getting back to the AI stuff that we were talking about before. There's that idea of like AI being able to process what we're seeing. We talk a lot about it being able to process the environment and understand the context of what we're trying to do, but that also applies to body language, right? Like there's some really interesting studies going on now around using like computer vision to help people with autism better read social cues, right? To like understand if somebody that they're talking to is, getting upset or happy or like communicating and augmenting.
Which direction is this in though? Is it scanning the autistic person's face?
No, it's scanning who they're talking to and who they're
It could be
interacting
both.
with. It's seen under, it could be, but yeah, it's seen understanding. It's a very targeted use case, but it's the kind of thing that previously, that marriage of like XR technology.
What would be the result of that scanning? If I have a device scanning this room for people's faces and their expressions, and so would it augment my view?
It would augment your understanding of how you're interacting with
In what
people,
way, though?
or at least in that for people who who may due to being autistic may not read social cues as effectively. It could help with
How would they see the information?
I think that the pilot studies, and I haven't delved too far deep into this, but I think it provides more feedback and more cues to the wearer in a way.
Heads-up display information.
Yeah, like a heads-up display kind of like.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, we're 20 minutes over this thing, so I'm going to have to call this. I want to leave you with this one thought, and that's going to be depressing for some of you. But I posted a picture of a magazine that said, "This should win the year of VR." Big letters. And that was published in 1995 magazine. So I've been wanting the Apple glasses for 4 years now, 5 years now, and so this is not going to be here immediately. We are really excited about this, but be patient.
It's not 5 to 10 years, it's maybe 3.
Yes, but we are interested in that. Thank you for sticking around for us. We're all available for questions. And hopefully we'll be here